hereby open this academic ceremony in which Khalid Alameer will defend the thesis, A New Perspective on Recovery Activities, introducing a multidimensional framework and investigating relations with well-being and work engagement. However, before I give you the floor, I would like first to welcome the people here in the audience, particularly also your wife. Unfortunately, your children cannot be here, but hopefully they can watch the video afterwards. But also I would like to welcome your family, friends and colleagues at home in Saudi Arabia. I guess there will be many. My name is Rob Ruiter. I will be chairing the meeting. I'm a professor in the Faculty of Psychology and Neuroscience. I will act as pro-rector. Opposite of me are the supervisors, Professor Ute Hulsheger, Dr. Uiterwillige, and the other people here present in the Defense Committee will be your opponents, and I will introduce them later. Mr. Candidate, may I please ask you to present a short summary of your study and conclusions of your thesis?
Dear Pro-Rector, esteemed committee members, family, friends, and colleagues, welcome to the public defense of my dissertation, A New Perspective on Recovery Activities, introducing a multidimensional framework and investigating relations with well-being and work engagement. In 2023, around 3.5 billion people were employed worldwide. Of these workers, about 44% reported facing significant work-related stress on a daily basis. Work-related stress is a major issue because it can contribute to health problems such as heart disease, stroke, depression, and burnout. It also impacts organizations and society. It leads to reduced productivity, increased absenteeism, and higher healthcare costs. Research shows that engaging in non-work-related activities, such as exercise, social activities, or hobbies, helps reduce stress and increase productivity. We call these recovery activities because they help us recover from work-related stress. Research also shows that when people mentally detach from work by not thinking about work during their free time, or when they feel relaxed, or when they engaged in activities that provide a sense of personal achievement, they can recover and return to their pre-stress levels. These are called recovery experiences, the psychological states we experience during non-work time. In fact, research on recovery experiences is more developed. Studies show that relaxation and mastery experiences improve job outcomes like work engagement, while psychological detachment helps reduce negative outcomes like exhaustion, which is a key factor in burnout. To fully understand recovery experiences, we first need to understand recovery activities. The reason is that recovery activities directly lead to recovery experiences, and they are things we can consciously choose to engage in, unlike recovery experiences, which are more of an outcome. When reviewing the recovery literature, we found significant limitations in current research. It often categorizes recovery activities into broad and loosely defined groups, such as the physical activities group, the social activities group, and the low-effort activities group. These groups contain a wide range of activities, which oversimplifies their differences. For example, the physical activities group includes dancing, cycling, basketball, and hiking, while the low-effort group includes activity like reading and watching TV. Now, please take a moment to look at this picture. Which category would you place this activity in? Is it physical, social, or maybe an outdoor activity? As you can see, some activities clearly fit into more than one category. It's hard to assign them to just one. Indeed, each activity is unique and has its own characteristics, the extent to which it involves, for example, physical effort, social interaction, or creative engagement. Therefore, The aim of my dissertation was to improve our understanding of recovery activities by exploring their multidimensional nature and how they relate to well-being and work engagement. To achieve this aim, we conducted several studies which are presented in 3 chapters of the dissertation. We started by identifying all the possible characteristics of activities people engage in during their non-work time and help them recover from work-related stress. After reviewing past research, we identified 7 key characteristics of recovery activities. These characteristics reflect the extent to which an activity or an evening involves physical and mental effort, social interaction, creativity, spirituality, and virtual engagement, and outdoor involvement. We then defined each characteristics. For example, the mental dimension refers to the extent to which an activity is cognitively demanding and requires the use of cognitive resources to complete. After that, we developed a scale to measure these characteristics with 2 versions, a short one with 14 items and a long one with 28. The short version is useful for studies where participants answer the same questions multiple times, as it helps avoid participation fatigue and maintain engagement throughout repeated survey responses. Next, we explored the relationship between characteristics of recovery activities and recovery experiences, specifically psychological detachment, relaxation, and mastery. In the same chapter, we also looked at how the dimensions of recovery activities indirectly relate to emotional exhaustion and morning vigor through recovery experiences. To explore these relationships, we conducted a daily diary study where participants completed the same survey for 10 days. This allowed us to see within-person effects how engaging in an activity with a creative component, for example, on a specific day affected the recovery experiences of the same person on that day compared to other days. We found several significant results, but the time will not allow me to go through all of them. Most importantly, we see here that the recovery activity characteristics are differently related to recovery experiences. For example, when participants' evening activities involved a high level of outdoor engagement, they reported high levels of psychological detachment and relaxation. In contrast, when their evening activity had a high creative component, they reported high mastery experiences. We also found that not all dimensions were related to desirable outcomes. Indeed, some dimensions were related to both desirable and undesirable outcomes at the same time. An example is the mental dimension. We found that engaging in activities with high mental component was associated with low levels of psychological detachment and relaxation, but the levels of mastery experiences was high. When it comes to the relationship with exhaustion and vigor, we found that through experiences, recovery activities also had different indirect relationships with exhaustion and vigor. For example, we found that participants who engaged in evening activities with high physical effort experienced high evening exhaustion when they didn't feel relaxed that evening. However, if they experienced a sense of mastery, that evening their morning vigor became high. We also found that when participants' evening activities were high in the social component, both their evening and next morning exhaustion were low if they reported feeling detached that evening. However, when they reported feeling relaxed, only their evening exhaustion was low, but not their next morning exhaustion. This may suggest that while social engagement is generally beneficial for recovery experiences and outcomes, its effect may last longer if participants experience psychological detachment. Next, we identified profiles of recovery activities and explored their relationship with recovery experiences and outcomes. Profiles here mean the combination of activity characteristics that people engage in during an evening. The reason why we study profiles of recovery activity characteristics was because people often participate in multiple activities in an evening, and each activity can have different dimensions. These combinations can affect outcomes differently. So it's important to understand how they interact and influence recovery. We conducted 2 studies, a daily study where participants rated their evening activities on 7 different characteristics over 10 days, and a weekly study where participants rated their engagement in activities after work for the whole week, every Friday over 8 weeks. In the daily study, we identified 6 profiles, while in the weekly study, we found 4 profiles. Interestingly, 4 of the weekly profiles were similar to those from the daily study. These profiles reflect the different ways participants spend their evening. After identifying the profiles, we explored their relationships with recovery experiences and outcomes. For example, when participants' evening were high in both social effort and outdoor engagement, participants reported the lowest level of psychological detachment, evening exhaustion, and morning exhaustion compared to other patterns of engagement. We also found that when participants' evenings were high in both mental and virtual engagement, participants reported lower psychological detachment and relaxation, but their mastery levels were high. When this combination occurred on work week evenings, their emotional exhaustion for that week was higher compared to other combinations of activity dimensions. There is an interesting observation here. The virtual dimension was positively related to relaxation when studied on its own, as mentioned earlier. However, when combined with the mental dimension, this combination led to lower relaxation experiences. Lastly, we found that when participants had low engagement across all characteristics in both daily and weekly time frames, they reported the lowest mastery, morning figure, and work engagement compared to other patterns of engagement. This may suggest that passive engagement in activities during non-work time may not be beneficial if the goal is to improve job outcomes. Finally, we conducted a weekly study to test the reciprocal relationship between recovery activity characteristics and recovery outcomes across weekly and bi-weekly time frames. In other words, we explored whether engaging in certain activities 1 week or 2 weeks improved recovery in the following week or 2 weeks, and whether experiencing work engagement or emotional exhaustion over 1 or 2 weeks influenced the level of engagement in recovery activity the next week or 2 weeks. We found that engaging in activities with the creative dimension in a week increased work engagement in the following week. We also found that 2 weeks of emotional exhaustion reduced engagement in outdoor activities during the following 2-week periods. However, we didn't find reciprocal relationships between the other characteristics and outcomes, and several reasons can explain this, like the complexity of the design we choose or the need for longer time frame to see the effects. To conclude, I believe this dissertation makes several valuable contributions to the field of recovery. First, it introduces a multidimensional framework of recovery activities with 7 key characteristics and includes a measure that is valid, reliable, and easy to use. It also shows how recovery activity characteristics differently relate to recovery experiences and outcomes both on their own and in combination. It also examines recovery activity dimensions across different temporal frames. Lastly, I believe this work has practical implications for both individuals and society by offering strategies to reduce emotional exhaustion and increase work engagement. That brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you all for your attention. I now give the word back to the Director.
Thank you for your presentation. The opposition will be opened now by Professor Sra. He's Professor of Work and Organization Psychology, Emeritus Professor at this university, and he was also the chair of the assessment committee.
Thank you, dear candidate. Let me first compliment you with your nice achievement. You have done a set of interesting studies, and this has resulted in a very interesting little booklet talking about recovery. You may know that I have a long interest in this topic, so I'm really pleased to see that this has come of it. And while you were at work, I also have been often wondering what you do to recover, because you were always working, etc., in the office. So, anyway, I'm not only here to give compliments, I also have a set of questions for you. And my first question actually would be, what actually is recovery? Could you give me a kind of a definition of recovery?
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your compliment and thank you for your question. Recovery is a process that includes a cycle of work and rest. So we actually go for work every day, and then this process helped us to unwind from the stressors that we face every day, and researchers talk about recovery, and they say it's a process. And I think one of your publications, like in 2014, you explain like the definition of recovery. It's a process, not an outcome. So, and this process we deal with every day. So not something that we achieve or it's a distal outcome that we need to achieve, but we have to recover from work stressors.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Agree. But then my next question would be, if it's a process, how would you measure recovery? So what are the indicators of this process?
Yeah, actually, researchers try to measure recovery. Like first, I think there is like a construct called need for recovery, and then they measure recovery like they measure indicators of recovery, like well-being, work engagement. So it's difficult to say how to measure recovery. We can measure its indicator, but also with objective measure, we can measure stress levels, because recovery means that we have low stress, like to return to the pre-stress level. So with objective measure, we can measure the stress. But recovery, it's a dynamic process, so it's
yeah, I agree. Yeah. It's not easy, but yeah. I'm not here to ask easy questions, so I will follow up with an even more difficult question. It's hard to say what kind of indicator, but then let's try to figure out what would have been the characteristics of such an indicator, since it's apparently a process. So what would be the characteristics of a parameter that could measure the process of recovery? Would it be resulting in a state or a trait, or what kind of characteristics would it be?
I think recovery is a state, because we every day we face work stressors, and every day we need to recover. And it's something that it's maybe in one day you recover, and in the other day you don't recover. So I think maybe by asking people directly, like, do you feel recovered? This is kind of a question that we ask every day. But recovery is not something organizations or people like want to achieve in the long distance. They want to achieve like well-being, health, and also like engagement, work performance. But if we don't recover, we will have bad health in the future.
And then if it's a state, but it changes over time, say maybe over a day, then time characteristics would be important, I guess. But would that be a longer period or a shorter period?
Yeah, I think focusing on temporal, like in our studies, we focus on like immediate recovery, if you engage in recovery activities, what happened that evening and the next morning.
Yeah.
But also, I think a prolonged, like if a person like do not recover every day, then a cumulative not recovering state may lead to a prolonged health problems.
Yeah, I agree. But given the fact that it changes and fluctuates a bit, then my question would be, would you agree with me that, for instance, using emotional exhaustion as a dependent variable would not be the best solution?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question, and I have discussed this a lot with a colleague, like whether like emotional exhaustion may be something that it's not, maybe fatigue is better indicator because, but if you looked at the emotional exhaustion items, like the question we ask, like, how do you feel right now? And I feel tired. So if we look at the emotional exhaustion item, it represents the state and the feeling. But I agree, maybe in future studies, we have to consider if emotional exhaustion is the better outcome for immediate effects.
Yeah, so probably look for another one. And maybe you could think of arousal, level of arousal, and finding maybe physical indicators for that.
Yeah?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
He's happy. Okay, then the opposition will be continued by Professor Herz. She's a professor of work and organizational psychology at Radboud University, Nijmegen, and was also a member of the assessment committee. Please.
Thank you very much, dear candidates. I switched to another mic because the mic here is missing, so I hope the camera will move along. With a lot of pleasure, I read your dissertation. It was during my summer holiday in which I worked and also had relatively a lot of recovery time. And I happen to be one of the persons who would really fit your outdoor physical profile and also recognize the social component in that. So the picture that you showed with the hiking group outside, rather vigorous, is really something that really would fit my recovery profile as well. But I was really impressed by your dissertation. It's a very thorough piece of work, innovative, and also your writing skills are very fine. So it almost read for me like a novel during my summer holiday. So thank you for that. I have several questions, but I would like to start with one that relates to the discussion that you just had with Professor Sra. I do agree that recovery is a process that evolves in time. One of the things that we know from theory and previous research is an important aspect of the recovery process is mood repair or affect restoration. So you already made the relationship with stress levels. When they are high, people experience arousal and have negative emotions, and recovery is sort of the opposite. So trying to get rid of that arousal and to improve your affect. So in many studies, positive affect or pleasure that people experience while doing a certain activity or the enjoyment are important components measured as part of the recovery process. But that part I did miss in your dissertation. Your recovery experience are detachment, relaxation, and mastery. So my first question is, what were your motives to not include aspects of positive affect? And might you have missed important information in the recovery process related to engagement in activities?
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your compliment and for your question. Yeah, I think including pleasure and the needs from the drama model, like need of affiliation and need for, yeah, there is another two. It's important, and in future study we think to include these that we in this dissertation we only focus on the 4 recovery experiences to introduce this approach and to show how it's important to investigate recovery activities, not only the experience. Regarding positive effect, I think with morning figure we already have, like, I think it's an indicator. Morning figure is an indicator of positive effect, but it's in the morning, not in the same evening. So I think we have this, but future studies, I think, need to investigate these dimensions in a broad, like, range of outcomes, not only exhaustion and figure. We might think of, like, other positive effect, activated and deactivated, and other negative.
Yeah, it's interesting what you're saying, because you relate it to figure as a potential recovery outcome. And of course, you could consider positive effect also as an outcome. But what I was trying to refer to was more as part of the process. And then I refer to positive effect that relates to doing the activity. So people can do all kinds of activities. I don't have to explain that to you, but they can enjoy it more or less. And this enjoyment related to conducting or engaging in certain activities, that could make a difference. But yeah,
Yes.
Have you considered to include that, or?
Yeah, we have thought about it, like the activity we do is not a behavior that we do, but also it includes a different range of motives and experiences, and it's really difficult to capture all of these in 1 or 2 or 3 studies. Yeah. And we are thinking in future study to maybe do like a daily reconstructive study to ask people like what you did and how you experience this. Yeah, so I think it's really important to investigate this, but I think we need more studies.
Yeah. Okay.
I agree with this.
Is there room for another question? Yes. Then my next question is about your chapter 3 about the profiles, which I found very interesting. Well, like I said, I'm interested in this outdoor physical profile, and I was a bit disappointed that this profile was not related to mastery experience. It was related to relaxation and detachment, but not to mastery experiences. Well, when I teach about this topic, I always teach, well, physical activity is important also because it contributes to self-efficacy, etc., and this mastery experience contributes to recovery. How do you explain the relatively low level of mastery experience in this outdoor physical profile?
Yeah, I actually surprised when I see the result, because in our first study we see that physical, mental, and creative were related to mastery experiences. But when it was combined with the outdoor dimension, it was not related to mastery, and it's related to psychological detachment. And this is good for the profile. So it has also some benefits, like you psychologically detach. Why mastery is not high? I think maybe because of the outdoor component take over, like the physical benefit, and it provides this sense, or maybe the focus was not on physical, maybe on outdoor. It's difficult to say why is the reason.
It did include also the vigorous activity, as I remember, this outdoor physical profile. It was all kinds of physical activity. Also, the more vigorous activity was included. Am I right or not?
we haven't asked
Oh,
about
okay.
vigorous activity.
Sorry.
We just asked about the dimensions, like to
yeah.
what extent the activity is physically effortful or
Physically effort, yeah.
yeah,
okay,
effort and social
Yeah,
interaction.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's really I think this is some of the interesting results that we see in our and we have to explore more why is this happen. Yeah.
Thank you. I do have another question, but I'm not sure about the time. It doesn't fit in a short. No, I think,
Then we continue.
You're lucky, Angelique. It was also your question. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Then we continue. The opposition will be continued by Professor Herz, Professor of Work and Organizational Psychology at Leuphana University in Lüneburg, Germany.
Thank you.
And also a member of the assessment committee, by the way. Yes.
Right. Thank you so much. Dear candidate, I would really like to congratulate you on your thesis. I not only read it with great interest because of the topic, but also with great pleasure because what we already heard, I fully agree that it was excellently written, so it wasn't work to read your thesis at all. So thank you very much for that. And also I found that you really mastered the recovery literature extremely well, which is not an easy thing to do. And as you know, the recovery literature is very much focused on the recovery experiences and kind of disregarded the activities. So thank you for bringing back recovery activities back into this literature. And we all know that I'm not the only one thinking that you did an excellent job there because one of your chapters already has been published in a, if not the top journal on this topic and in the field. So congratulations. Nevertheless, there are some open questions. And I would like not to focus on the single chapters that is papers maybe so much, but take a look on the broader implications and meanings of your dissertation. And my first question regards issues around time and timing in recovery. From a methodological point of view, it's clear that you've chosen daily diaries and weekly diary studies and so on. If you look at it now from a more practical but maybe also theoretical point of view, after finishing your dissertation and a lot of different studies, what would you say, what's the optimal timing for recovery? When and how should I engage in maybe which type of recovery activities so that I can recover well?
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your compliment and for your question. It's difficult to say what is the optimal time because recovery is a process and its outcome, there is a proximal outcome and there are like delayed outcomes. So I think it's better to investigate this recovery activities deeply, like to investigate it in a daily diary design and also in a weekly and monthly or a year study to see its effect on like performance, for example. So I think it depends on the outcome. If it's short outcome, and it's important also because in the recovery literature, it's important to recover daily. So if you and I think in the literature of vacation, like when people just recover in vacation, they return to their to burn out like 1 week after the vacation. So I think it's important to. I can't say that there is an optimal time frame, but it's important to study all time frames. So this is the thing that we write in our dissertation because we found some significant results in the daily, but we didn't find in a week after. Yeah, when we control for the previous week. So, yeah.
All right, thank you so much. I do have a follow-up question on this, especially in this daily diary research when we analyze the data, we very much focus on within-person processes, so changes from day to day, comparing, for example, engagement in recovery activities for that one person. So now my question is whether we might miss something when we focus on this only. So what role would you think does stability or routines in recovery play? So me going to the gym every Wednesday for the exact same time and doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, I think when we study the when we do daily diary study, we study the immediate effect, but we miss the cumulative effect of how the how engaging in recovery activities in a specific characteristics accumulate over time. So I think we miss this when we study within person on a daily diary design, but I think with the longer time frame, like weekly or monthly, we can understand why engaging in physical activities like high physical effort in a month may increase or benefit recovery well. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. Nevertheless, even if we look at weekly, when we do the same type of analysis, we still compare only the weeks of this person with that same person's weeks. So what about the between-person perspective on recovery? And maybe I can combine this with my second question. What role do you think individual preferences and needs, which might change from day to day, but which might also be different from person to person? So I'm focusing on this differences between persons now. Which role do such between-person differences and comparisons play?
Yeah, I think culture, gender, age group, they all, and needs, personality traits all affect engaging in recovery activities. We haven't investigated this in our research, but I think they they are important. And for example, yeah, we want to explore what consciousness people, when they engage in virtual activity, is it same when neuroticism people engage in virtual activity, how this affect also their need, and what I mean by need, on a state and threat level, if in a day you have need for affiliation, did you how you benefit from engaging in social activity if you have this specific need in that day, or also individual differences, if you are older, what activities are important for you and lead to you to recover from work.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. Thank you. Do I have more time?
Briefly.
Okay, so that's actually a very brief question. After your dissertation, would you say we can have a one-size-fits-all approach? So is there the one tip we can give people, or isn't it that easy?
No, it's not easy because, as you see in the results, that some dimensions are lead to desirable outcomes, while at the same time lead to. So it depends on what we need. If someone feel exhausted, maybe they have to engage in activities that reduce exhaustion. And if someone didn't feel exhausted and want to have vigor, they engage in activities that lead to vigor.
Thank you.
Okay. Then your position will be continued by Professor De Rijk, Professor in Work and Health at this university, and also a member of the assessment committee.
Thank you. Dear candidate, also my congratulations with your indeed well-written thesis, and I also want to include your supervisors in addressing my congratulations. I was very pleased to be invited to read your work in depth because I think that recovery deserves more attention in work stress research. And with this thesis, you follow in the footsteps, it's already mentioned, of famous predecessors at Maastricht University. I was also very pleased with the new REC instrument. It's always very interesting to develop a new instrument and not only, well, there are several chapters about this new instrument. And my first question is particularly about chapter 2, which is a very rich chapter. It's impressive, and it's in particular about the sample. You have developed a measure that assesses the extent to which actual activities that the respondent engaged in are described by the characteristics listed. So this requires some abstract or analytical skills to fill in, because one has to relate one's actual activities one engages in with characteristics. Working at the Department of Social Medicine for 2 decades now, I'm very aware of issues of socioeconomic differences, educational differences between within populations. So I was looking for educational differences or the descriptions of the educational level of your respondents, but I couldn't find that in chapter 2. And next, I saw as an indicator of demographics, the age was asked, but the age was relatively young for workers. And third, it was also not clear from which country the participants came, and it has also been touched upon, I think, in your introduction, that, well, leisure activities might be culturally determined. And might also depend on prosperity issues, how wealthy people are. So, my question is, to what extent was the sample in chapter 2 a valid sample for, well, you mentioned it developing the measure, but it's also a validation of the measure, I think. Yeah, could you reflect upon that?
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your compliment and for your question. Regarding the sample of chapter 2, I think we conducted 4 studies. The samples for the first 3 studies from Prolific, and we asked for participants who can speak English well and from European country. So I think the validation was for European sample. And for the 4th study, which is a daily diary study, we have a sample from different nationalities and also from different languages. Like we have German, as a language, we have German, English, French, and Italian. And also we have, I think, Asian who completed the survey in English from Singapore and Indonesia. This is the sample we have, and for chapter 4 we have a sample from Arabic countries, mainly from Saudi Arabia, for the last study. For these samples, we cannot compare between them because in some sample we have less participants, and also the design, like for the Arabic sample, we choose to go with a weekly study. With the international sample, mainly European, we choose to go with the daily diary study. I'm sorry to not include this in the dissertation, like the information, because when we publish the research, the publishers always have limit. Yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm very pleased that you, with your explanation, and as I understand, this proves a validity across cultures and across countries. And how about the educational level? So in chapter 2, indeed, there are several studies, but none of the studies the samples. The educational level of the sample is being described, if I understood well. And to what extent do you think that your new measure requires a certain educational level or a certain level of analytical thinking? Is it difficult to fill in the questionnaire, do you think?
Yeah, I think our sample was employees and from countries that, like people who works in office, like from 9 to 5, like we didn't have shift workers, or maybe we have less blue collar workers. I think our sample was from different education group, but mainly I think bachelor degree. So many of them have bachelor degree. I haven't explored whether people with like secondary school degree really understand. But when we develop the questionnaire, we try to make it easy for 6 years old to understand it. So I think this is,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and our sample was, like the age of our sample is 31, so it's still young. And maybe for like more validation of this approach, we need to have like, people who are like, older samples. So,
variety, you agree with me. Yeah. Well, I have another question, but we also have other opponents, so I understand if I...
We continue. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Then the opposition will be continued by Dr. Ren, Assistant Professor, Social Psychology at this university.
Thank you, Chair. Dear candidate, it was a joy reading your dissertation. I was really excited to read about the multidimensional approach to recovery activities. I thought it's really clever and creative and thoughtful. And I believe this new approach could push the field beyond the traditional way of thinking, and it gives us a much better grasp on the different characteristics of the recovery activities. And another point I want to mention is that I want to compliment on your methodological rigor. And I particularly enjoyed reading that you consider different time intervals in your studies. That's still rare in the field. And another is the pre-registered analyses of the really complex reciprocal causal relations. It's very ambitious. So I do have 2 questions. And my first question is something that's actually related to a couple of previous discussions on sample size, sample characteristics. Another question about, is there one-size-fits-all approach to this? So as I was reading through your dissertation and learning about the outcomes of recovery profiles, and I can't help but wondering what comes before. What are the determinants of these profiles? So I was thinking, what are the reasons that could influence people, how they approach their evenings, right? I think the reasons could come from a lot of different spaces. It could be because of the job they have, job security, working conditions, the nature of tasks. Do they deal with customers, or they sit in front of the computer for hours? It could be because of individual differences, as we mentioned briefly before. It could also be because of the environment, right? Something about the neighborhood they live in. Is there urban or rural? Do they have access to green spaces? Or something about the household. Who do you live with? Do you live alone? Or do you have children? Do you live with others? So I'm curious to hear about your thoughts. Say we're going to have another dissertation on the topic. Now we're going to look at the possible determinants, okay? And from your expert opinion, if you were to rank the importance of all these possible determinants, could you share some thoughts on where do we start? What would you pick, the top 3 most important determinants, and why?
Esteemed opponent, thank you for your compliment and for your question. It's difficult to rank. Yeah, as a work and organizational psychologist, maybe I will go with the work characteristics, but also other characteristics also related to engaging, like in these kind of profiles, like openness to experience is related to like physical and outdoor, and also like for as a state level, like for work stressors, maybe related to engaging less in the physical and physical outdoor profiles. So I think, yeah, there are many antecedents of engaging in these characteristics and in these profiles, and all of you mentioned are important, like the job characteristics, work demands, work resources, job resources, and also like your needs, like as I said before, like at the state level, like today you feel that like you need to be in a group. Yeah, I think I will start with the job stressors because they are important predictor, and then we can also advise organizations, yeah, that these kind of stressors lead to less engaging in these profiles, which are important to recovery and also to job outcome.
Yeah, thank you for your response. And I really like you bring up the differences of more stable and structural determinants, but also some state-level determinants, something we experience that fluctuate from day to day. So maybe we need another dissertation on this topic. So I have another question, if I may. And this is a question I'm going to move to your multidimensional approach. I've noticed you have several dimensions there. It's fascinating. So I was reading this, just going to explain my question from a little bit of background here. I am a social psychologist, and I study social experiences and well-being. And one emergent literature in my field is on the opposite side of social experiences. It's about the absence of social interactions, and where people call it alone time or solitude. This is the absence of either virtual or in-person interactions. And say you go to a cafe, you can read a book about yourself. That is considered as solitude. Or you can spend the time in your own room without talking to others on the phone or video calls. That's also considered solitude. So what researchers have found is that solitary activities could be quite enjoyable and relaxing and functional as well. And in fact, in my own studies, I also see that people believe solitude is an important part of their everyday life, and many people actively seek solitude to rest, recharge, and recover. So I was wondering about your thoughts on solitude. Do you think solitude could be another ingredient of recovery activities? And how do you reconcile the idea that both social and solitude activities promote well-being?
Yeah, I think there are studies that also show that like video game provides social support, which is the thing that we get from social activities. So for people like introvert people, when they engage in video game, they have this feeling of social support. And also in our study, we show in chapter 3 in the profiles that profiles with low characteristics in all dimensions, it has some benefit for psychological detachment. Maybe it's not good for figure or for work engagement, but for detachment, it's good to engage less in social activity. So this is something we show in our studies. Yeah, I agree that, and also some studies, like I think a student of Professor Sra, like listening to music is important. So I think not only activities, maybe all of our profiles, like the social characteristics were high, but we have a dimension where the social is low, and it's also important for, so as we say, like there is no like just one activity that you have to engage in to recover, but but every profiles may have different outcome. And in future studies, we need to explore these antecedents and outcomes, like different outcomes of different recovery engagement.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then the position will be continued by Dr. Weert, Assistant Professor of Work and Organizational Psychology at this university. Please.
Thank you. Dear candidate, I also would like to add to all the compliments, and I think I would like to underscore several things that already have been said about the quality of your dissertation. I find the introduction or the clear reintroduction of the different activity dimensions very valuable because it provides important nuance to the literature. I also think there probably are a lot of researchers following up on this and to really link the specific activities to potentially specific experiences. And I think that's super, super valuable. So big compliments for that. And I also would like to highlight that I'm very happy to see that the third study of the dissertation, or the fourth chapter, I believe, was pre-registered. I think that's also something we don't see often enough in work and organizational psychology. And I think that's, super important thing. So one is more conceptual nuance and one is more transparency, and both we need to see more in our field. So thank you for that. I, of course, also have questions, and I have two bigger question complex, and I would just like to start with the first. You have in your propositions written, I'm just going to read it out, I think. Understanding the diverse dimensions of recovery activities can inform public health policies aimed at reducing workplace stress and improving societal well-being. And I always, I struggle a bit with what this concretely could actually mean. Could you maybe elaborate a bit on what kind of health policies are maybe suggested or implied or follow from the findings of your dissertation, or how could we go about the question of translating such findings into health or societal policies?
Esteemed opponent, thank you for your compliment and for your question. Yeah, I think when we want to change people behavior, it's important to consider also a top-down approach, not to go always bottom-up and advise people like what to do, but also like the policies also need to change to enhance people behaviors. Like for example, to engage in outdoor activities, we need to create an outdoor environment for them. They need to have time to engage in an outdoor activities. If they are all days in work, they will not have time to go out to enjoy the outdoor and to enjoy the benefits of outdoor. And we show this in our last study, like people who are emotionally exhausted for 2 weeks, they have less outdoor engagement in the next 2 weeks. So I think it's important to not only advise individual, but also we change advise like the governments, organizations to change their policies.
Thank you. And would you say from the findings of your dissertation, for instance, you gave 2 examples, right? Maybe providing more free time is one thing to do, or creating more outdoor activity, conductive environments, or things like that. Would you say from your study these are 2 very clear policy implications, or would you say it depends a bit on the context where you want to implement them? How you view that?
Yeah, I think it depends on the context. Like if the organization in the city is different than if the organization in a small city or a village. I think it's different. So Like for people like who live in cities, maybe they don't have time for outdoor activity, then we have to investigate the activities that lead them to detach, and not just to say that, or we create an outdoor environment for them to recover from work stress.
And maybe in order to relate a bit back to things that already have been asked a bit, but also needs and preferences have been mentioned. Do you think this is also something to consider in policy making then? And if yes, how?
Yeah, of course, but we also need more studies to investigate these needs and how they relate to the characteristics. And then after we conduct this study, we can have clear advices for public policies. For older people, what kind of activities they need to recover. For younger people, what kind of activity. And also we show in, I check the correlation table, and there are some different difference.
You may briefly finish your answer, please.
Yeah, there are some different, like age group, they have different engagement, like older people prefer social activity and younger people prefer physical and outdoor activity. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Dear candidate, the time appointed for defending your thesis has passed. The degree committee will now withdraw to discuss the quality of your thesis and the quality of your defense. I request that you and your company here await the results of our deliberations and our return in this room.
Please all rise.
The PhD defense has now ended. The degree committee will debate the candidate's performance behind closed doors. This process usually takes about 10 minutes.
Southside, 7 miles in my rearview mirror. I know what it felt like. My goals only getting clearer. East side to the west side. No place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. All your time, 'cause I'll go the extra mile. Long road to the south side, 7 miles in my rearview mirror. I know what it felt like. My goals only getting clearer. East side to the west side. No place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. On the dash, got my laces tied. Long road, I don't waste no time. Break rules because fate decides. With the team and we chase the light. I make a move, fall down, shake it off. I hate to lose, bad branch, break it off. No room for negativity, praise and love. Prepare for deep part cause we're taking off. The mileage, traveling so far from home. Gathering knowledge, other connections. I put the time in to get everything I ever hoped for. It's a challenge and we all in. It's a better future that we go for. Even though these nights seem long, I know that I am never on my own. Know you won the battle once you've grown. Southside, 7 miles in my rearview mirror. I know what it felt like. My goal's only getting clearer. East side to the west side. No place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and that. Long road to the south side. 10 miles in my rearview mirror. I know what it felt like. My goal's only getting clearer. East side to the west side. No place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and that. Years can't fly by now, don't waste all your time. 'Cause I'll go the extra mile.
Khalid, Alameer. The degree committee here present has assessed the quality of your thesis and your defense. In view of its positive verdict and taking into account your previous qualifications, the degree committee has decided to grant you the degree of doctor. Dr. Uiterwilliger is authorized to confer upon you. Dr. Professor Hulseger is authorized to confer upon you this academic distinction in accordance with Dutch university custom. I invite your supervisor to now take the floor.
Do you promise to work in accordance with the principles of scientific integrity at all times? To be careful and honest, transparent, independent, and responsible?
Yes, I promise.
By the authority vested in us by law and in conformity with the decision of the committee here present, I hereby confer upon you, Khalid Mohammed Alameer, the degree of doctor and grant you all rights attached by custom and law. As evidence of this, I now present you with the degree certificate signed by the rector, the secretary, and the other members of the committee and affixed with the official seal of this university.
Congratulations, Dr. Alameer, Khalid. Talking on behalf of Ute as well as myself, it has been a great pleasure for us working together with you on this PhD project. You've been a truly outstanding candidate, hardworking, very proactive in setting up the projects, and with an eye for detail on all the aspects, but particularly the statistical analysis. You largely taught yourself many state-of-the-art techniques, including SEM, profile analysis, and random intercept cross-legged analysis. Higher. Which shows your curiosity and drive to really understand these methods. From this also stemmed our only point of concern we sometimes had during your PhD trajectory. We sometimes wondered why it took you a bit longer to come back to us when we gave you some feedback or asked you some questions. But then we found out this really had to do with your eye for detail and your conscientiousness. It usually meant that you had been searching the internet, looking at YouTube videos, and looking at all the discussion boards online on how to interpret certain statistical results. Characteristically, you also became our expert in the use of AI in science. And at a certain moment, we found out that you're actually a very big social network influencer in the field of occupational health psychology, with probably the most likes and followers on LinkedIn and all kind of profiles. Coming from Saudi Arabia to write your PhD in the Netherlands is an impressive achievement. You've also done a great job adjusting to the country and fitting into our little WOP group. You came here with your wife Malak and your son Fahad, and you had another son, Sultan, halfway your PhD trajectory. You moved several times in and around Maastricht, each location with its own challenges, such as including difficult neighbors, having to maintain a garden, and living close to the airport with all the airplanes flying over your house, before you settled into a nice apartment. You were also trying out several diets. We understand your wife is a very good cook. And you were missing the activities, playing soccer with your friends at home. So you were afraid of slowly gaining weight. But luckily you managed to keep fit. And you became one of the regulars in the padel club of our colleagues. I also enjoyed our walks very much, in which we of course talked about your research projects, but also about the differences between Saudi Arabia and the Netherlands, and about life in general. So I would like to do the final words in Arabic. I'm practicing a little bit, I hope it's understandable for you. Azizi Khalid, al-amal ma'ak kan yusruni, nahnu fakhurun, bil-bakhth aladi kamil tahu, وأصبحت صديق جاد. Thank you.
Dear Dr. Alameer, before I close this session, I would like also to congratulate you on behalf of Maastricht University, but also the Faculty of Psychology and Neuroscience, and in particular the Department of Work and Social Psychology. I also would like to include your wife, family, friends, some friends here, but also family, friends at home. I hope they have enjoyed it. I'm sure they have enjoyed it. And also include your 2 sons, of course. And also your team of supervisors, I think. They prepared you very well, and they made it a nice day also. Thank you, people from the degree committee, for asking the questions, also in particular traveling those from a bit far, Nijmegen and Lüneburg. Thank you very much for coming to Maastricht. Much appreciated. Dear Dr. Alameer, I had a plan this afternoon, I think, and I think I will stick to it. This has been quite an exhaustive mental activity for me, being the chair. I think I made a plan to go cycling this afternoon, make a big cycling tour into Belgium. I was originally thinking, because of the nice weather, I should take the opportunity. But now I have a much better reason. It's because I need recovery time, and I will take that time. But we will also take it together first. After I close, we will go to the Refter for some drink, I don't know what, but we will we have the opportunity to congratulate the young doctor. And we will follow you a bit later, because we will first take a picture on the stairs with you, with your wife. Yep. Okay, good. I close this ceremony.